Hello, welcome once again to the Turret of Pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm your host, Zip Gun, the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom, and I'm doing another moment, except this isn't going to be like the other moments. The idea of the moments was to have these points in time that were like little epiphanies to me in music as I grew up from being like an infant almost. And a lot of these were easier to pinpoint than others. And but it was a series of steps from when I was born, 1959, through what we called pre-Beatles, where I was just an infant and I didn't have any musical taste. I just knew what excited me, what sounds excited me. And so we've gone from strength to strength here, and the last moment that I've managed to document was the moment that that my best friend's older brother went to see The Who. And that spawned a whole, I got interested in The Who. And so what had previously to that point been two bands, the Beatles, the Stones. Everybody else was kind of in the soup, but the Beatles and the Stones, you could take them to the bank. Every year I got the new Beatles record. Every year I got the new Stones record. Religiously from yesterday and today. I got Out of Our Heads, I think it was. And then I got Flowers for, I think it was my 8th birthday. And got Satanic Majesties, I think, somewhere around there. And so on and so forth. But The Who meant, there was 3. So now I was going to buy all the records now by these 3 bands that I just loved. Which was getting kind of tricky because I was still only a kid. And then something happened, and this is where this one's going to kind of bog down. These are supposed to be short, snappy little videos. I don't think this is going to be that. They're also supposed to be about moments that happened. And the problem is, if I were to pick the moment that this video starts, I wouldn't know what day it is. I could probably get close. And this moment is sort of nebulous and hard to explain, but it'll make itself clear. Up to this point in time, all the new music I heard was either on the AM radio band, good old CKLG in Vancouver. They were really the main one. There was a couple in Victoria here. They were less hip. CKLG was kind of the most hip of the AM stations. They played the Yardbirds and stuff. And up until when that Who concert at the Agrodome happened, there was only AM radio, really, to disseminate music. But around then, and specifically here in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, CKLG AM started an FM station, and at first, 1964, it was easy listening. All the FM in those days was like stereophonic, easy listening, dining and dancing, And so, at some point, CKLG FM, which of course had a tiny listenership, FM was still kind of in its infancy. They decided to do, I think it was an R&B show. This went over really well. People really liked it. It got kind of hip, got a little bit of cachet. So then I think, and the date I've picked out here is March the 16th. No, where am I here? March 16th, 1968. That was when CKLG-FM decided to go to a rock music format. 1968. Well, this couldn't have happened at a better time for old Zip Gun here, because I was constantly absorbing new music. I just wanted to hear, and I liked weird music. I liked it different. And there was very few bands that I had exposure to that were doing anything sort of new. And I remember one band I heard around this time. People started making long songs, and I was into long songs. I thought long songs were cool, because up to this point in time, your typical rock song was under 3 minutes long. I remember when I would look at the Beatles records and go, wow, there's a song that's over 3 minutes. That was unusual. Suddenly songs were 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And suddenly bands were putting entire sides of one song. And I remember, it's funny because I just went and listened to it now. I haven't listened to it, I'm sure, since it came out. Love, Revelation. I remember that being, when I was just a kid, hearing it and thinking, oh, that's interesting. And I think the reason I thought that was because I must have remembered the little sax bit in the middle, because it's mostly completely terrible, like just unbelievably bad. But that was sort of the beginning, and then suddenly everybody was doing long songs. The Doors were doing long songs, and FM radio would play these long songs. And so this moment is the moment I discovered FM radio. And this was just like, I don't know how you describe it, like the first time you do LSD, perhaps. This opened up, and I got a little list here. This is about a year. Because FM radio, of course, was free, you didn't have to pay for it. And it was, especially when they started playing all through the night, it got freeform. And you know, this is 1968, remember. People were like, hey, DJ is going to go for a smoke break, you know. Maybe get high on some Mary Jane. Why don't you put In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida on the long version? So this got to be pretty... I didn't know this, of course, I was just a dumb kid. But here's some... what am I looking at here? What am I looking at here? Oh, so these are the records that came out pretty much at the same time as because I was listening to CLG AM. And when I found out they had an FM station, I thought, okay, I had just got an FM radio, which was pretty skookum for a 10-year-old. And so I would tune into CKLG FM, and especially at night. Now, I like to sleep with the radio on. I don't anymore, but I used to. And so I'd fall asleep, and these would be the soundtracks to my dreams, if you will. So, March the 16th, 68. Okay, let's just go 68. This is about a year now. November the 1st, Canned Heat, Livin' the Blues. Double album, Going Up the Country was the hit. There's a song on it called Parthenogenesis, 20 minutes long. It's the epitome of psychedelic blues. I highly recommend you hear it. They would play this at 3 in the morning. I was entranced. The Beatles' White Album came out November 22nd, 68. So, of course, they would play things like Long, Long, Long. They would play things, of course, like Revolution Number 9. Let me see. December the 6th, you get the Stones Beggars Banquet. Well, 2 6-minute songs on that. And, you know, I mean, maybe their best record ever. That got played a lot. That's December the 6th. January 30th, first Led Zeppelin record comes out. And there's a great story in here. Led Zeppelin came out, and then April 28th, Chicago Transit Authority comes out. This is a big record for me because it introduced me to the concept of wind instruments in rock bands. And I was starting to sort of almost discover jazz. And then May 17th, Tommy. Okay, well, I bought Tommy. Sight unseen. July 68. This is a big one. The Firesign Theater puts out How Could You Be in Two Places at All When You're Not Anywhere at All, which features Nick Danger, Third Eye. Now, this got heavy airplay on FM radio at 2 in the morning, like just everywhere. And, of course, you'd be sitting there listening to the radio. And these guys, again, these are sidelong things. So they could go out and take a pee or whatever. They didn't even have to be there for these. And these were very common, where about 2 in the morning, suddenly there'd be a Firesign Theatre record on. And at least half the time it was Nick Danger, because Nick Danger was the easiest Firesign record to kind of get into. It was a pastiche of old radio dramas, and every once in a while they'd play the other side of that record, which is a pretty weird record. I love the Firesign Theatre to this day. They were really unique, and they sold a few records. You know, 19, so that was July. I'm not sure when in 69, but there was a record by a couple of guys called Clark Hutchins, very obscure record, A equals MH2. They put out a record on the then brand spanking new Sire Records, Decca in England. And I got it, I heard it somewhere, I think, on FM radio. I found a used copy of it at the local hippie record store and bought it. And that was a big influence, because it was basically just two guys improvising in an 8-track studio where they'd build up rhythm tracks, and then the guitar player would wail. And I thought this was just the greatest thing I'd ever heard in my life. I still have a copy of it somewhere. They did an amazingly funny song. They actually became a band. They did a record called, I think it's Retribution, where they do I Just Want to Be Stoned for the Rest of My Natural Life, which is a real funny song. Rounding out the FM radio moment, if you will, early January 1970, Charlie Hayden Liberation Music Orchestra. Weird jazz. I didn't know anything about jazz. I started hearing things like Circus 68, 69, and I was like, this is interesting. You don't hear this on the radio. A little bit later in that year, there was the timeless, for me, Iron Butterfly, Butterfly Bleu, which is a huge suite from their Metamorphosis album. They'd kind of broken up, got back together again. This song, for me, is the end of the 60s. That's it. It's over. And it got played a lot on FM radio, 14 odd minutes long. Sort of a suite of things, as is the Canned Heat one. It's sort of a suite as well. But all of this stuff I've just listed off is about within a year. I'm just being bombarded with it. And so, but the moment for me was when I started listening to FM radio, and it got to the point where I would just listen to it all the time, especially at night. I left it on all night. It drove my parents nuts. So if there's a moment here, it's basically the moment CKLG hired their first all-night disc jockey, because I was there right at the beginning, because I'd been a fan of LGAM. And for whatever reason, I didn't want to listen to the American stations. I couldn't relate to a lot of what they were telling me. Needless to say, a lot of these bands, I became, Led Zeppelin, the Stones, the Who, the Beatles. Canned Heat, I still have a real soft spot for that album, even though a whole album of it is them doing Refried Boogie, which is like an endless boogie. A late addition on this list is a lot of the time they would play stuff, and they would just play huge sets of songs. They wouldn't tell you what it was. And I've sort of verified this had to have been 1972, so it's a bit later on. I listened to CKLG FM all through the 70s. I think I didn't stop until about 1979. And so through the 70s, they had a pretty standard, very adventurous, anything goes kind of program director, I guess. And there was one song, and they would play it a little bit every so often, and it wasn't very long. It was just a bunch of organ chords repeating a cycle of these organ chords. And after the cycle goes through a couple of times, this tape loop of a laugh comes in, and it's it has a little rhythm to it. And they would play this. Well, they played it more than couple of times, and it was creepy in the middle of the night. It would just come out of the radio. And I thought somehow I got it into it, because one day I'm like, who the hell is this? Because they would never announce it. It'd be stuck in the middle of 10 other songs. And I got it in my head. I guess I must have either misheard or something, but I thought it was Frank Zappa. And so I went around for a little while thinking that the only piece of music I'd ever heard by Frank Zappa to this point, because I was a little late coming to Zappa, was, in fact, the Bonzo Dog Band doing a piece called Slush. And it's from their last album. I think it was their sort of contractual obligation album. And it took me a long time, 10 years, to figure this out when I bought Best of the Bonzos. And there it was at the end of the Best of Bonzos, which was like, hey, I know this song. And I've had a few great moments where I go, hey, wait a minute, I know this song. When I discovered that my first record was actually Chopin's Polonaise No. 6. It was many, 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 many years after I bought it and enjoyed the hell out of it forever. So those kind of moments are great. But without CKLG-FM, I would not be the person I am musically. I would probably have listened to, a lot of different stuff. But this was where I got started on jazz. And I got started on things involving horns. I got started on sort of experimental electronic music a little bit, I guess, if you will. Time Has Come Today by the Chambers Brothers. I remember hearing the long version on the radio. That was a pretty early song. Where they had a short version, they made the edited version. Light My Fire, there's another one. But the long versions were cool. And for a little bit, there was a period of time where Whole Lotta Love by Zeppelin, which was their first real single, was edited. And I had the single. And I remember buying the edited single and then not feeling too ripped off that I bought when I bought the album, because I got the long version on the album. So there you have it. That was my moment. 1969 was like an endless moment. So I'm going to just say 1969 and be done with it. Interesting things would start to happen. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button and everything, because then it makes us better, apparently. Tough times down south of the border. Look after each other. Don't take shit from Whitey. And we'll get out of this one way or the other. I have faith in my fellow humans. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk at you later. Here's an addendum to the 1969 story. Christmas, 69. I was in elementary school. I think I was in grade 5. And our class, our grade 5 class, had a quote-unquote Christmas party. Hey! And the teacher said, what can we do at the Christmas party? And, nobody really knew what to do. And somebody said, well, Scott has a record player. Now, not very many kids back then in my part of the world had their own record player. It was pretty unusual. Or had lots of records. So I went, and the teacher, well, could you bring your record player? And I went, sure, I guess so. I'll bring some records. Yeah. Now, remember, I'm not your typical whatever 9-year-old. And I had a friend in the class, tough kid, Dave Peters. And he goes, hey, I'm going to bring this record my brother bought in Seattle. Oh, what is it? Oh, you'll love it. You wait. So, as it turned out, I only showed up with Tommy because I had just bought Tommy. Don't ask me why. I was bound and determined to play it for everybody. And Dave had brought the first Led Zeppelin album, which I'd never heard before. And we had asked the kids to bring records. And so out of the entire rest of the class, one kid brought the single of Jingle Bell Rock. So we're like, okay. So we start out with Pinball Wizard. which was kind of a hit, but not really. Nobody had heard it before, and nobody liked it. It was too weird. So then the kids said, play Jingle Bell Rock. So we played Jingle Bell Rock, and everybody was well pleased, and they're all dancing around, ding, 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 ding. I like, play it again. So we play it again. Then somebody goes, just keep playing it. And we went, come on. So Dave goes, let me play my record. So we put on Good Times, Bad Times. And it's booming out of my not bad little record player. And the kids hate this. They hate this song. No, put on Jingle. So they play. So there's a big fight, basically. So the teacher decides, okay, here's what we'll do. Dave and Scott can pick a song, and then you guys can pick a song. So for the rest of the party, we alternated between Jingle Bell Rock and songs either from Tommy or the first Led Zeppelin record. I seem to remember we got to, I think it was Your Time Is Gonna Come, when the teacher just packed it all up and got us to turn it off. So there's my Christmas party memory of '69. Oh boy, those were the days.